Three women thought they were dealing with love, arguments, jealousy, and relationship drama. But before each story ended, a mother was gone, children were left traumatized, and the person accused was not a stranger in the dark. One woman left with her boyfriend and never came back. One called 911 while fighting for her life. And one was inside her own home when her children witnessed the nightmare no child should ever see. Stay with me till the end, because these three cases are not just disturbing. They show how fast love can turn into a crime scene. The part of this case that makes your stomach turn is not just that Tabulon Reece was found dead before sunrise. Is the way the night started. Because just hours before police found her body on Lawton Road, Tabulon was alive, dressed up, and out at a nightclub with the man people knew as her longtime boyfriend, Nicholas Jordan Gandy. There was even a Snapchat video. One of those ordinary late-night clips people post without thinking. But after Tabulon was found dead, that video became something else. It became the last window into her final hours. Because after that video, Tabulon left with Nicholas. And according to what her family later told detectives, he came back without her. Then before dawn, he was arrested at an Amazon distribution center. Then police found Tabulon's car. And inside that car, detectives said they found blood, a fired casing, and Nicholas Gandy's ID hanging from the rearview mirror. So this case begins with one question that refuses to let go. What happened after Tabulon Reece left that nightclub with the man she trusted?
Afternoon, we now know more details about a homicide in North Charlotte over the weekend. CMPD says they have taken a 37-year-old man into custody. Officers arrested Nicholas Gandy, who's now facing a murder charge. CMPD says early Sunday morning, officers responded to a welfare call in the 700 block of Lawton Road. And when investigators arrived, they say they found 33-year-old Tabulon Reece shot in the head. Police say Reece later died at the scene. Family members told CMPD that she was last seen with Gandy, who was her longtime boyfriend. Gandy was
Tabulon Debreshea Reece was 33 years old. She was a mother of three, a woman connected to the Charlotte area with roots in Chester, South Carolina. She was not living some public celebrity life. She was a real woman with children, family, responsibilities, and people who expected her to come home. And at the center of her final night was a man she knew very well. Nicholas Jordan Gandy. He was not described as a stranger. He was not some unknown person she randomly crossed paths with. He was her longtime boyfriend. That is why this case feels so personal. Because from the outside, this was the kind of relationship people may have looked at and thought they have history. They know each other. Whatever issues they have, they will figure it out. But sometimes, the most dangerous moments do not begin with a stranger jumping out of the dark. Sometimes they begin with someone familiar saying, "Let's go." And that is where Tabulon's final night starts. On the night of February 15th going into February 16th, 2026, Tabulon was out with Nicholas at a nightclub. Around midnight, she posted a Snapchat video. In that video, she was seen wearing the same outfit she would later be found in. Nicholas was also there. Now pause there, because at that moment, nobody watching that clip would know they were looking at one of the last known signs of Tabulon alive. To anyone else, it was just a night out. Music, a club, a couple together, a normal-looking moment. But after everything happened, that little video became chilling. Because it placed Tabulon with Nicholas shortly before she died. And after that, the night starts slipping into darkness. Tabulon left with him. That is the detail that matters. She did not vanish from the club alone. She did not walk off with some mystery person nobody could identify. She left with someone connected to her life. Someone her family knew. Someone who had been close enough to her to be called her longtime boyfriend. And when a woman leaves with someone like that, most people do not panic immediately. They think, okay, she is with him. They think she will return. They think the night will end like any other night. But this night did not end that way. Because according to what her family later told detectives, Nicholas came back without her. And that is where everything changes. Two people leave together. Only one returns. And the person who does not return is later found dead. That is the moment where fear enters the story. Where is Tabulon? Why is she not with him? What happened after they left? Why did he come back alone? And according to investigators, Nicholas also gave conflicting explanations about the vehicle situation. So now, instead of answers calming everybody down, the answers started creating more questions. That is how a normal night begins to turn into a homicide timeline. Not all at once. Piece by piece. First, the Snapchat video. Then leaving together. Then him coming back without her. Then the confusion. Then the early morning arrest. Because around 4:30 a.m., Nicholas was arrested at the Amazon Distribution Center on Old Dowd Road in connection with an unrelated trespassing incident. That detail sounds random at first. But in a murder investigation, nothing that happens during the victim's final hours is random until detectives prove it is. So now the timeline has another strange stop. Tabulon is missing. Nicholas is at Amazon before sunrise. Her car becomes important. And then comes the call that confirms the worst. Police are sent to Lawton Road in northwest Charlotte for a welfare check after someone reports a person lying on the ground. When officers and first responders arrive, they find Tabulon. She is already gone. Police said she had been shot, and first responders pronounced her dead at the scene. Now the story is no longer about a woman who did not come home. It is a murder case. And the man investigators are looking at is the same man she was seen with hours earlier. Once detectives realized Tabulon had been killed, the investigation moved into one clear mission: rebuild the night. They had to take the final hours and put them back together. And the first piece was Tabulon's own Snapchat. That video gave them a starting point. Around midnight, she was alive. She was wearing the same outfit she would later be found in. And she was with Nicholas. That means detectives did not have to guess who was around her shortly before she died. Then came the family's statement. Tabulon left with Nicholas. Nicholas later returned without her. That created the most important gap in the entire story. Because somewhere between leaving the nightclub and being found on Lawton Road, something happened. That is the part nobody can look away from. Was there an argument in the car? Did the mood change after they left the club? Did Tabulon sense something was wrong? Did she think she was just going home, only for the night to take a turn she never expected? We cannot pretend to know the private conversation because the public facts do not confirm it. But what we do know is this. By the end of that missing window, Tabulon was dead, and Nicholas was no longer with her. Then detectives looked at phone data. Tabulon's phone reportedly placed her near the area where her body was later found, and also near the Old Dowd Road area where Nicholas was arrested. That gave investigators movement. Now, the story was not just based on what people remembered. It had digital footprints. A phone can place a person in a timeline. A phone can show movement. A phone can quietly tell detectives this is where she was before everything ended. But the strongest piece came from the car. A vehicle was towed from the Amazon Distribution Center area. That vehicle was registered to Tabulon, and when detectives searched it, the case became heavier. Inside, they found blood. They found a discharge cartridge casing on the driver's side floorboard. And they found Nicholas Gandy's ID card hanging from the rearview mirror. That is where the car becomes the silent witness in this case. Because people can deny. People can change stories. People can leave gaps. But evidence inside a vehicle does not care about excuses. A casing tells detectives a gun was fired. Blood tells them violence happened. An ID tells them who was connected to that space. And when all of that is inside the victim's car, the story starts closing in. This is why Nicholas became the focus. Not because of one detail. Because of the chain. Tabulon was seen with him. She left with him. He allegedly returned without her. He was arrested before dawn near a location tied to her car. Her body was found. Her phone data lined up with key locations. And her vehicle contained evidence police believed connected him to the killing. That is a powerful evidence trail. And by February 16, 2026, Nicholas Jordan Gandy was charged with murder. For now, Nicholas Jordan Gandy is not walking away from this case as just the boyfriend who was last seen with her. He is facing a murder charge. And that means the story is no longer just about what happened that night. Now it becomes about what prosecutors can prove. Because one day in court, the timeline will have to be laid out piece by piece. Tabulon seen alive around midnight. Tabulon leaving with him. Him allegedly coming back without her. The early morning arrest at the Amazon Distribution Center. The phone data. The car registered to Tabulon. The blood found inside. The fired casing. And his ID hanging from the rearview mirror. Those details are not small. Those are the pieces that can turn a confusing night into a case a jury can understand. And if prosecutors prove that Nicholas Gandy took Tabulon's life, then the courtroom will move to the part her family will be waiting for: sentencing. That is where the law will decide what price a person should pay for taking a 33-year-old mother of 3 away from her children. Because Tabulon did not just disappear from a nightclub story. She did not just become another name on a police report. She left that night with someone close to her. And by morning, she was gone. So the case is not finished. The final sentence has not been handed down yet, but the charge is serious. The evidence trail is heavy, and the justice process is now moving toward the day Nicholas Gandy will have to stand before the court and answer for what investigators say happened in those missing hours. And if Tabulon's final night was chilling because she left with someone she trusted, stay with me, because the next mother called 911 while her own boyfriend was attacking her, and the dispatcher heard the moment everything went silent.
The state is asking for a bond hearing today. We are asking the court to set bond at this time at $1 million cash bond. Right now, the charges that we are examining are for first-degree intentional homicide with a dangerous weapon and possession of a firearm by a felon. The information that we have so far is that on March 8th, 2021, Kenosha Police Department dispatch received a 911 call from Charniese Brown at about 5:20 p.m. In listening to that recording, Ms. Brown can be heard screaming for help, crying, saying, "He's trying to kill me, help me, he's about to kill me, he's killing me, his name is Ranon, he stabbed me, he's got a gun, help, help." Then you can hear scuffling sounds, you can hear what sounds to be like stabbing sounds. She again repeats his name, that it's Ranon Brownlee. She says, "He is killing me, help me, please." And then there's silence while the line is still open. And in the background, you can hear the voice of a male yelling with the use of profanity, "Who you effing, who you effing." And then there are sounds that appear to be either striking or stabbing sounds. The dispatcher asks Ms. Brown if she is still with her. There's silence, and then there is the sound of what appears to be a shotgun going off.
The most terrifying part of Charniese Brown's case is that help was already on the phone. She was not missing for hours. She was not found days later. She called 911 while the danger was happening inside her own home. On that open line, dispatchers could hear her screaming, crying, begging for help, saying the man in that house was trying to kill her. And while police were racing toward the address, the call captured the chaos inside. A struggle. A man's angry voice demanding answers. Charniese fighting to survive. Then silence. Then the sound that told everyone listening that this had just turned into something even worse. By the time the first officer arrived, Charniese Brown was found on the stairwell leading out of the side of her home. She was only 26 years old, a mother, and the man accused of killing her was not a stranger. It was her live-in boyfriend, Ranon Brownlee.
When y'all have the little children, they're your babies. And as they grow up, they're going to always be your babies. But then they start becoming, they start looking at you and you looking at them and you see something. And you start seeing a connection because they'll move a certain way, they'll smile a certain way, they'll look a certain way, and you're like, "Oh, Lord, that's mine," And you see different parts of them, and you see different parts of you and the father, your husband, whoever, however you got the baby. But, and that's what Charniese was. She was my strength. She was my daughter. She was my best friend. But she was my strength. She was my pride. Because I saw mistakes she made, and I saw how she shook it off. And she came back. She came back strong. And she used to always tell me, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you because your comeback game is strong." She said, "You bounced back real good." And she was my pride. All of my children are. But, the older they get, the longer you have with them. And the harder it is to let go. And, your children become your friends. You get cool with them, and they become your best friends. I done lost my 2 best friends within the course of 6 months. But what I want to acknowledge is that my 4 oldest children are gone, and each one of them is related to domestic violence. Don't get it twisted. Love does not hurt. Love does not shame. Love does not tear you down. Love does not break you down. It builds you up. It makes you greater. And if you have love and it's not building you up, if you are with someone and they say that they love you and you're not better this month than you were last month, you need to do a reevaluation. Because see, that was what that monster thought was love. He loved her so much, he took her away from each and every one of us, from her children. He didn't just hurt her. He didn't hurt her. She gone on. She's singing with the angels. She up there turning up with her brother. We the ones down here broken and shattered and destroyed. But that's love. If that's love, I don't want you to be friendly toward me. Don't even be my friend. I'm cool. So we got to acknowledge, like Josh said, we have to acknowledge, and we got to be that real friend, that real uncle, that real auntie, that real person that says, look, he don't love you. Now you need to move around. You need to do something different. You can do, we gonna figure this out one way or the other. And ain't nothing wrong with calling 911. I don't care how mad she get at you. Because see, I wish a many a day when she said, Non did this, I had called 911 all the way from New Mexico. Ain't no shame in it. I would rather somebody not speak to me, but be able to see him on the street and wave, than to see him like this. Yeah. So I'm telling y'all, stand up. Stand up. Don't do this. And I don't care if it's your brother. If he getting beat up, you better stand up. Whoever it is, stand up.
Charniese Brown was 26 years old, living in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. She was a mother of 4. And inside that home, there were 6 children connected to the household, her children and Brownlee's children. So this was not just a relationship. This was a home. Children were there. Daily life was there. Arguments were not happening in some faraway place where nobody could hear them. They were happening around a family structure, around young ears, inside a house that should have been safe. And at the center of it was Charniese and her live-in boyfriend, Ranon Brownlee, a man more than twice her age. He was 51. She was 26. That age gap already gave the relationship a heavy power imbalance. But according to what came out later, the relationship was not just complicated, it was abusive. The tension that led to the killing did not appear out of nowhere. It began building before that Monday evening. Over the weekend, Brownlee accused Charniese of cheating. And once that accusation entered the relationship, things escalated fast. He sent her threatening messages the night before the murder. The words carried jealousy, anger, control, and the kind of emotional spiral that should never be ignored. He believed she had played him. He believed she had cheated. And instead of walking away, instead of cooling down, instead of letting the situation breathe, he moved deeper into rage. That is the part that makes this case so frightening. Because this was not just a sudden argument that exploded in 1 second. There were warning signs. There were threats. There was jealousy. There was control. And by the next evening, Charniese would be calling 911 from inside her own home. On Monday evening, March 8, 2021, Charniese was at her home in Kenosha's Lincoln Park neighborhood. The children were in the house. And the tension between her and Brownlee had already been building from the accusations and threatening messages the night before. Then the argument turned dangerous. Charniese knew she needed help, so she called 911. That call is what makes this case so haunting, because it means the outside world did not discover the violence afterward only through a crime scene. Emergency dispatch heard part of it while it was happening. Charniese could be heard screaming for help. She was crying. She was telling them he was trying to kill her. That is the kind of call that makes every second feel heavy. Because on one side of the phone, dispatchers are trying to keep her alive, trying to hear her, trying to get officers there fast. And on the other side, Charniese is inside a home with the man attacking her. The dispatcher asked if she was still there. But Charniese could not give the kind of answer anyone wanted to hear. The line captured the struggle. It captured Brownlee's voice. He was still pressing the cheating accusation, still demanding to know who she had been with, still trapped in that jealous rage, even while Charniese was begging for help. That is what makes this case so disturbing. Even in the middle of violence, the obsession was still there. Not concern, not remorse, not stopping, just accusation, just rage, just control. Then the call went quiet. And seconds later, the situation reached its worst point. Police arrived within minutes. But those minutes were not enough. When the first officer got there, Charniese was found on the stairwell by the side exit of the home. Officers and paramedics tried to save her. But she did not survive. The children had heard parts of the argument. They were not right there in the physical attack, but they were inside that home while the nightmare unfolded. And that detail matters. Because when a mother is killed inside a home with children nearby, the crime does not end with one victim. It leaves trauma in every room. It leaves children with sounds and fear they should never have had to carry. It turns a house into a memory they may spend years trying to escape. When police arrived, Brownlee surrendered. But surrendering did not mean the story was over, because now detectives had to separate his version from the evidence. Brownlee pointed to wounds on his hands and claimed self-defense. But prosecutors pushed back hard on that. They argued the wounds did not match what he was trying to say. And more importantly, the state had evidence that made this look less like self-defense and more like the final escalation of domestic violence. They had the 911 call. That call was powerful because it captured Charniese's fear in real time. She was not calmly describing a misunderstanding. She was screaming for help. She was saying he was trying to kill her. They had the threatening messages from a night before. That mattered because it showed the violence did not come from nowhere. It showed the jealousy had already turned into warning signs before the attack. They had the children in the home. They had the autopsy findings showing the attack was severe and fatal. And they had Brownlee's history. Prosecutors described him as a man with a documented pattern of violence toward women, especially when he did not get his way. That detail is important because it helped frame the killing as part of a larger pattern. Not just one argument, not just one bad night, not just one moment of jealousy. A pattern of control, a pattern of intimidation, a pattern that ended with Charniese dead inside her own home. And when this case went to court, the evidence gave prosecutors a clear story to present. Charniese was threatened. Charniese called 911. The attack happened while help was on the way. Brownlee was there. He surrendered at the scene. And the call itself captured the terror of her final moments. That is the kind of evidence a jury does not forget easily. Because it is one thing to hear lawyers describe what happened. It is another thing to know the victim tried to call for help while the crime was unfolding. In 2022, a jury convicted Ranon Brownlee of Charniese Brown's murder. And with that conviction, the case moved from the question of guilt to the question of punishment.
There were prior threats by Mr. Brownlee to Ms. Brown. In fact, the phone records revealed that the day before he was angry with her and sending her threatening text messages because he believed that she had been cheated on him over the weekend. He says, "You played me all weekend. Have fun tonight like it's your last. You already cheated. The crime is done. Just remember you're saying, the state can have my kids. They're better off. I don't care what happens to me. Life is over to me. I'm done. I can't take it no more." And then he also sent her a text saying, "Your balloon release party is coming," which Miss Brown's party, Miss Brown's family explains that they were having an event for Ms. Brown's brother who had been murdered in Michigan, where they were going to release balloons in commemoration of his life and death. And so it appears that this text message by Mr. Brownlee was warning Ms. Brown that her balloon release party was coming. He does admit that he sent that text message. He denied that it was a death threat.
On April 17th, 2023, Ranon Brownlee stood before a Kenosha County judge and learned the punishment for what he had done. The sentence was final. Life in prison with no possibility of extended supervision. No second chance outside. No future release plan. No walking back into the world Charniese was taken from. That sentence meant the court was not leaving a door open for him to rebuild his life, while Charniese's children were forced to rebuild theirs without their mother. And for Charniese's family, even though no sentence could bring her back, this was the moment the justice system made one thing clear. Ranon Brownlee would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The courtroom chapter ended with him losing his freedom forever. But for Charniese's children and family, the pain he caused became a life sentence of its own. Stay with me, because the next two boys were inside their own home when a short argument ended with their mother shot multiple times before sunrise. At around 4 o'clock in the morning, while most people on Gardner Drive were still asleep, police in Columbus, Georgia, got a shooting call from a home where a mother lived with her 2 young sons. Inside that house was 28-year-old Lexis Antrim, a mother, an aspiring actress, a woman her family described as caring, loving, and deeply attached to her children. But by the time officers arrived, Lexis was unresponsive. Her 2 sons were in the home. Her partner, Kevon Davenport, was also there, injured. And what police found inside that house was not a random break-in, not a stranger attack, and not some mystery from outside. It was domestic violence inside the place Lexis should have been safest. A brief argument had turned deadly, and before the morning fully arrived, 2 boys had lost their mother in the same home where they were supposed to feel protected. Lexis Antrim was 28 years old and lived in Columbus, Georgia. She had dreams bigger than the life she was living. Her family said she wanted to become an actress. She had that kind of dream where a person sees more for herself, where she believes there is still another version of her life waiting somewhere ahead. But before anything else, Lexis was a mother. She had 2 sons, ages 7 and 13. Those boys were her world. Her mother, Tunisia Seals, spoke about Lexis as someone warm, loving, and nurturing, the kind of woman who poured herself into her children. And that is what makes this case so painful. Because Lexis was not killed somewhere far away from her family. She was not taken in a place disconnected from her everyday life. She was killed inside the home where her children were. The man at the center of the case was Kevon Davenport. Some public accounts described him as her husband, others as her boyfriend, but either way, he was her partner, the man living in that home with her and the children. From the outside, their relationship had a public image. There were social media posts. There were affectionate words. There were moments where Davenport presented Lexis like someone he loved. He had once called her my favorite girl. And that is the scary part. Because people can look at social media and think they understand a relationship. They see captions. They see pictures. They see smiles. They see a man claiming a woman publicly. But nobody really knows what happens when the phone is put down, when the door closes, when the argument starts, and when the children are in the next room, hearing things they should never hear. With Lexis and Davenport, the public image did not save her. Whatever love people thought they saw online, something inside that home became dangerous enough to end her life. And on Thursday, February 12, 2026, that danger exploded before sunrise. It was around 4 a.m. on Gardner Drive in East Columbus. That hour matters, because 4 o'clock in the morning is not the time most families expect chaos to tear through the house. Children should be sleeping. The home should be quiet. The streets should be calm. But inside Lexis's home, something was wrong. According to the information available, Lexis and Davenport got into a brief disagreement. That is one of the most disturbing parts of this case. Because this was not described as some long public fight that stretched for hours in front of everyone. It was a short argument, a moment, a disagreement. But in the hands of a violent person, even a short argument can become fatal. And that is exactly what investigators say happened. The argument escalated. Davenport allegedly opened fire, shooting Lexis multiple times. Reports say she was shot 7 times. Just sit with that for a second. A brief argument. Inside the home. Children nearby. And the response was not to walk away. Not to cool down. Not to leave the room. It was violence so extreme that Lexis had no real chance to escape what was happening inside her own house. Her 2 sons were there. One was only 7. The other was 13. Public reports say they witnessed the murder. And that detail changes the whole story. Because this was not only the killing of Lexis Antrim. This was the destruction of her son's sense of safety. A child can survive a moment like that physically and still carry it forever. They lost their mother in most terrifying way, inside the same home where she was supposed to be able to protect them. When police arrived, Lexis was unresponsive. She was pronounced dead at the scene at 4:50 a.m. Davenport was also found at the scene with a gunshot wound. But Lexis was gone. Her dreams were gone. The acting career she wanted was gone. The years she was supposed to spend raising her boys were gone. And those 2 children were left behind with a memory no child should ever have. Once officers entered that home, the case moved quickly into the hands of the Columbus Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit. The scene told them this was serious immediately. A woman had been shot inside her own home. Her children were there. Her partner was present. And there was no need to search for some unknown man running through the neighborhood because the person investigators focused on was already connected to the scene. Lexus's body was later taken to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Laboratory in Decatur for an autopsy. That step matters because in cases like this, the autopsy helps confirm the details prosecutors will later need: how she died, how severe the attack was, and what the physical evidence shows about those final moments. But while investigators worked the scene, Lexus's family was entering a different kind of nightmare. Her mother, Tunisia Seals, had to face the death of her daughter. And what made it even heavier was that Lexus was not the first woman in the family whose life had been touched by domestic violence. Tunisia spoke publicly about that pain. She carried guilt. She wished she could have stopped it. She wished she could have stepped in, calmed things down, or somehow changed the ending before it got to that point. That is one of the hardest parts of domestic violence cases. After the murder, families start replaying everything. Every warning sign, every argument they heard about, every moment they wondered whether things were worse than the victim was saying. Every time they thought, maybe they will work out. And when the worst happens, loved ones often blame themselves for not seeing enough, not doing enough, not pushing harder. But the responsibility belongs to the person who chose violence. And in this case, police moved against Davenport quickly. He was charged with murder the following day. That speed tells you investigators believe the case had a clear direction. They had a shooting inside the home. They had Lexus dead at the scene. They had her children present. They had Davenport there. And they had the kind of violence that turned a short disagreement into a murder case.
With murder. Called me mom, and he was respectable. He had called me in regards to, I guess, them arguing about some stuff that happened. And I try to stay out of my children's stuff because they're grown, and I tried to get the best advice I could, but I didn't know it was like this.
Seals says she feels guilty that she was not able to intervene and help diffuse the situation. Her daughter's loss carries even deeper pain because domestic violence has already impacted her family in the past, losing her mother and father in a murder-suicide many years ago.
It's okay to leave. It really is. It's okay to leave. Because if you don't leave, you can end up like my daughter and like my mother.
Kevon Davenport is now facing a murder charge. And that means the story does not end on Gardner Drive. It moves into court. That is where the evidence from that morning will have to stand in front of a judge, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and eventually, if the case proceeds that far, a jury. The shooting call, the crime scene, the children being inside the home, the number of times Lexus was shot, Davenport being found at the scene, the autopsy findings, the investigation by the Violent Crimes Unit. All of those pieces will matter, because prosecutors will not be telling the court about a misunderstanding. They will be presenting the death of a 28-year-old mother who was killed inside her home after a brief argument allegedly turned violent. And if Davenport is convicted, the next phase becomes sentencing. That is when the court will have to decide the punishment for taking Lexus away from her sons, her mother, and the future she was still trying to build. Because Lexus Antrim was not just a headline. She was a mother with 2 boys who needed her. She was a daughter whose mother now has to speak about her in the past tense. She was a woman who wanted more from life. She dreamed of acting. She had warmth. She had love in her. And she had children who should have been waking up that morning to their mother still alive. Instead, they became witnesses to a tragedy that will follow them for the rest of their lives. That is why this case hits so hard. Because from the outside, there were signs of love. Social media posts. Sweet words. A man calling her his favorite girl. But inside the home, in the quiet hours before dawn, that image collapsed. And Lexus Antrim became another woman whose life was taken in a place where love was supposed to live. A short argument. A gun. 2 children in the house. A mother gone before sunrise. And now the justice system has to answer for what happened inside that home on Gardner Drive. 3 women. 3 mothers. 3 relationships that looked familiar from the outside, but ended in the worst way possible. Tabulon Reece left with someone she knew, and by morning, her family was left asking what happened in those missing hours. Charniese Brown called 911 while the attack was happening, and even with help on the way, the violence reached her first. And Lexus Antrim was inside her own home, with her children nearby, when one argument turned into the moment that destroyed a family forever. So I want to ask you honestly, which of these cases disturbed you the most, Tabulon, Charniese, or Lexus? And what you think is the biggest warning sign people ignore in relationships like this? Is it jealousy? Control? Threats? The constant breaking up and going back? Or is it the way some people can look loving in public while becoming dangerous behind closed doors? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your opinion may help someone else recognize something they are currently overlooking. And if this story made you feel something, don't just leave quietly. Like this video, share it with someone who watches true crime, and subscribe to the channel for more disturbing real crime cases like this. Also, check the channel for other true crime stories that are just as shocking, because every case we cover here has one goal: to remember the victims, expose the darkness, and keep the conversation going. I'll see you in the next case.